What's going on, guys? This is the Red Politician, and if you are new, please like, comment, and subscribe. And today's video, we're gonna be going over the primaries, like basically Super Tuesday, where we had a whole bunch of primaries ranging from South Dakota all the way to California, and we're gonna be going from like the smallest states to the biggest states, and we'll just start off with South Dakota. And as you can see, this margin might be a little surprising for a long-time incumbent because Justin, who again really didn't run a campaign, it was basically like a protest vote, and he got literally 20, a quarter of the vote. Like that is insane. It's like if he actually campaigned and actually had a little bit of money, like he probably could have got like in the low 40s or like the upper 30s, like for sure. Like honestly, he probably would have got it within like 15 to 20 points if he actually tried. And it goes to show that the establishment, it's like they're increasingly becoming less and less popular. Again, Mike Rounds isn't like the worst senator, but he's probably bottom 15, bottom 10. Like he's pretty weak on a lot of things. So, and thankfully, a rhino who ran for governor, Dusty Johnson, who honestly is not very good. Again, he's a statewide House because again, Republicans in South Dakota and North Dakota only have one House seat. And for being a statewide House seat member for basically a decade, he got third place. So again, there's another kind of mediocre at best House seat member going for governor, and again, he's got destroyed. And Larry and Toby actually did pretty solid. Larry replaced Christy Nome because Christy Nome was governor of South Dakota. And again, just overall pretty big win. And again, like kind of a rhino goes down. So, and again, his replacement to Dusty seems solid. All the surface level research I've done, he seems solid. So that's basically it for South Dakota. Pretty solid. Republicans put up a pretty decent guy. In again, so he swept the primary, but Democrats again have endorsed like an independent candidate who's running as an independent, like a fake independent who would caucus with the Democrats and vote in line with the Democrats, 80 to 90% of the time. Same thing that they're trying to do in Nebraska, but I think Pete Ricketts will beat him in that fake independent in Nebraska anyway. But Democrats put up a candidate, and even if the independent was the only person on the ballot and like the Democrats didn't run a candidate, Republicans still probably would have won it anyway by like upper single digits either way. So not really kind of and again they nominated a Democrat anyway, so they basically had very little to no chance in the first place. And again, that's kind of the final nail in the coffin. And also again, Democrats or Republicans nominated a pretty solid candidate for Montana's first district, Flint, but Democrats nominated Sam, um, and this guy Sam. He's like a like he's basically a Bernie bro. Like he's very far left. And again, this is a Trump plus 9 to Trump plus 11, like Trump plus 9 at the low end, but I think it's almost Trump plus 11. Democrats actually had an outside chance of maybe possibly flipping this. I think it would have been pretty low, but they could have made it somewhat competitive. But they nominated like a left wing lunatic, and it's like, yeah, your chances were slim. Now it's basically practically zero. So again, pretty good news in Montana. Unfortunately, we kind of have bad news in New Mexico. Democrats kind of put up their best candidates, and they just put in a write-in candidate for the Senate. It's like they didn't even put up a Senate candidate. Again, Republicans still probably would have lost in New Mexico for sure, but they could have made it somewhat competitive. Again, like they used to win races in New Mexico, but the state GOP now is like basically non-existent. It's like again, especially after 2024 with the margins that Republicans got with Hispanics, it's like they honestly could run somewhat competitive in New Mexico, and New Mexico in itself was somewhat competitive back in 2024, but it's like the state GOP is basically non-existent. They keep on dropping the ball, and it's extremely frustrating because Republicans actually could be somewhat competitive here. But at least you nominated, a Republican for governor at least. But again, it's probably not going to really go anywhere, unfortunately. But New Jersey, another state that Republicans as you can see, is very divisive primary. And even if Murphy got basically all the vote behind him, he still would have lost to Cory Booker by like 15 points because again, New Jersey's New Jersey. not really the best for the Republicans and off your elections. But as you can see, obviously, but Democrats kind of had caught a break because in New Jersey's seventh, I thought they were going to nominate a kind of weak Democrat that would be easier for Tom Keene to beat. But unfortunately, they kind of put up a strong recruit, and unfortunately, she won. And it's kind of troubling because again, Tom King, he's not really there. He's not really campaigning, and we don't know really where he is. He's like missing or whatever. I hope he's doing okay. Like just politics aside, I hope he's doing okay. But if that's going to be basically how his campaign's going to be, not really basically absent, yeah, Republicans are probably going to lose that seat, and that doesn't mean that Republicans are going to lose the 17th House seat with Mike Lawler. I think Mike Lawler could hold on narrowly, but definitely not a good sign. But and the main two states we really want to get to is New York. I mean, not New York, but California and Iowa. We'll start with Iowa. Joni Ernst, um, like some people, are not happy, and that's why I kind of get the concern about her being kind of or Ashley Hinson, being kind of a rhino, but she's like she would be a party line vote. Like she isn't going to be like this full on rhino. Again, and but she's like basically our strongest recruit, and again, I want to kind of play safe. And again, like Democrats nominated Josh, like I think he'll lose, but it will make it somewhat competitive. But he'll definitely probably lose because again, he's like she's our top recruit essentially. But this was kind of an upset. Randy again, like he's just too close. I think the reason why is like Zach ran like a populist, like Maha and like blue collar type of campaign, and Turning Point endorsed him, which again was probably another win. And your average voter in Iowa is growing frustrated with the current Republican governor and the establishment in Iowa because they haven't been doing so well, and the Iowa economy is kind of struggling. And it's not really Trump's fault to be honest with you, but it's like people are growing frustrated and they want change and they don't want like a kind of a mediocre establishment Republican. So again, I believe that's why Zach, have had won, and this is a good thing because Democrats are kind of putting up their strongest candidate, Rob Sand, which he's basically running as like honestly, he's basically running as like a Republican, like a somewhat moderate Republican. And if you have like people are very unhappy with the current Republican governor, and this guy Randy is basically Frinsta, I believe that's his last name, is running as like a very mediocre Republican. People are not going to be happy. And I think if he won the nomination, I honestly think Ron Sand would probably win, to be honest. But I know there's some concerns about Zach, being like this weird fringe right, conspiratorial, like fringe right retard, candidates because he went on like a couple podcasts. But after watching the podcast and seeing how it was basically kind of like a media tour getting his name out there, and obviously it worked because if it wasn't for that, honestly, I don't think he would have won the primary. So obviously it worked and it was definitely worth it. And again, if his campaign is basically how he did in the primary, where he's running on like environmental like health issues, but like not in like a progressive Democrat way, but like pesticides and running on like agriculture and like basic common sense good issues that the establishment Republicans are kind of dropping the ball on, while also being like kind of pro MAGA, pro Trump, and like running on blue collar type of thing. I think honestly he probably would beat Rob Sand. Again, it will be close, but I think if that's the campaign he's running on, I do think he could win by 3 to 4 points. It'll be very close in Iowa, but Democrats are not putting up a bad candidate. And also a side note, Miller Meeks, she actually did pretty solid in her primary. This is a Trump plus 8 or 9 seat, but she barely won in 2024, and she like I honestly think she's probably still gonna lose. But Miller Meeks doing pretty solid in her primary gives me a little hope that she can maybe somehow hold on somehow. But overall in Iowa, pretty solid for Republicans, and an upset as well, an upset for governor, but I think in a positive, good way. And I do hope he could win because that would suck if Rob Sand would win. Even though I don't think he would be a spam burger if he gets in there, because To be fair, if like Rob Sand gets in there, he can't be like a spam burger type. As soon as he gets in there, he's like a far left progressive nut job. Because again, this is a Trump plus 13 state, and if he does get in there, it's like he is a progressive crazy person. Well, he's going to be there for 4 years instead of 8 years. He'll be a one-term governor. So, and the last state we're going to touch on is California. I won't go too in depth because I made a whole video about how California, the turnout dynamics, and Steve Hilton being on the ballot, a Republican on the ballot, because California has a weird jungle primary system that's meant to keep Republicans off the ballot. But thankfully, Republicans were able to win at least. I don't know if they're going to stay in first place, but he'll probably Steve Hilton will probably go down to second place. I know there's some concerns that like ballot shenanigans or whatever, and like Tom Steyer would be in second place, and the second place that's right now will go to first, and like Steve Hilton will go down to third. I don't think it will turn out that way, even though the later ballot dumps favor Democrats. I don't think it's enough for Steve Hilton to lose. And again, Steve Hilton will probably go to second place, but he'll probably be on a ballot. And again, statewide turnout's going to be up for the Republicans, because again, if it's two Democrats, turnout won't be nearly as high. But if there's a Republican top of the ticket, the turnout's going to be much higher, and people will actually show up. And that's why, like down ballot House races, there's going to be people voting red down ballots for some certain House races, which is obviously a good thing. And again, like you have like the 13th, the 22nd with Belladeo. It's a swing seat that could stay Republican, but it just kind of depends on who shows up to vote, and also with independents. Even though independents kind of broke more for the Democrats more than expected in California, Republicans still were able to flip a couple House seats, which was genuinely surprising. But again, as you can see, like the 13th, the 22nd, even the 40th district, honestly, Republicans actually might be able to was actually two Republicans. That's a Republican seat anyway, but you get the point. Republicans honestly could legitimately hold on to the House because of like a possible dummy mander when it comes to these seats, because how like the double ranked choice voting type of like the jungle primary system. So overall, not too bad for Republicans. And again, if Steve Hilton in the general election is able to hit, you know, even like the upper 30s, 38, 39%, but if he's able to hit that magic number of 40%, I do believe there could be some dummy manders with like it comes to the 13th, the 48th, and like a couple extra House seats down there. I'm not saying Republicans are going to flip on net like 5 seats in California because of dummy manders, but it's definitely not out of the question that two or three could go Republican because of those said dummy manders. So overall, not too bad for the Republicans in terms of like the Super Tuesday or the primaries. And again, there will be a couple more primaries going on in the next coming weeks and months and beyond until basically September. So I'll try to keep you guys updated. And again, if you are new, please like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Red Politician signing off. Peace.